a drenched delivery box, a howling storm, and a knock on a lonely door. That's how Daniel Reyes's life changed forever. In a single fleeting moment, his entire world flipped from one of quiet despair to a dramatic whirlwind of hope. Rain lashing against the window, thunder rumbling overhead, and the glow from the porch light illuminating his soaked figure. All this set the stage for an encounter that neither he nor the woman behind the door could ever forget. Brace yourself for an epic journey of heartbreak, hope, and unbelievable twists as one single dad battles the odds for his young daughter's future. Daniel Reyes lived in a cramped apartment on the outskirts of Whitewood, just an hour from Vancouver. The paint on the walls peeled, the faucets dripped at ungodly hours, and the flickering overhead bulb in the narrow hallway was a constant reminder that his life seemed to be on a precipice. At 32, Daniel was a single father to 6-year-old Lily, who was his entire world. Everything he did was for her. She had her mother's inquisitive brown eyes and his bright smile, though that smile had grown rarer in recent months. His ex-wife, Maria Sandoval, had left him 2 years earlier for reasons that still haunted him. It wasn't that Maria didn't love Lily. She did. But she felt trapped in a life that offered no excitement, and the daily struggles drained her. When Maria walked out, Daniel could do nothing but watch. His life took a downward spiral. He fought for custody. He had to sell his motorcycle to pay lawyer fees. Eventually he secured custody, but the toll was heavy. Now, as a single dad, he balanced 2 part-time jobs, one at a local hardware store, and another delivering pizzas for Old Jack's Pizzeria. The pay was minimal, but it kept the lights on, the rent just barely paid, and Lily cared for. On that fateful day, when dark clouds gathered over Whitewood, Daniel noticed the subtle tension in the air. His manager at Old Jack's, Robert Bobby Hawkins, was pacing around like a caped lion, worried about the storm warnings. They needed deliveries made before the weather turned ugly. Orders were pouring in from people too afraid to leave their houses. Daniel had pulled into the parking lot, Lily's car seat empty in the back. She was at his neighbor's place, a sweet older woman named Mrs. Cynthia Bernard, who lived across the hall. Mrs. Bernard babysat Lily on nights like these, offering comfort and a stable presence that Daniel needed desperately. As Daniel donned the black ball cap that read Old Jack's, he offered a weary smile at Bobby. "Don't worry, I'm on it," he said. The wind had already picked up outside, whistling through the cracks in the door. Large drops of rain spattered on the storefront window. It was going to be a nasty storm, but Daniel needed the tips. Bills loomed. Lily's school fees were overdue, and so, armed with pizzas and quiet determination, he hopped into his rusted Toyota Corolla and headed out into the brewing tempest. Lightning cut through the sky as he maneuvered the streets. Trees bent under the assault of the wind. Branches snapped and littered the roads. As Daniel squinted to see through the torrent, he wondered how he'd gotten to this point. What twist of fate had him risking his life in a storm just for a few extra bucks in tips? But there was no time to dwell on that now. There was a delivery to make on Maplewood Drive. He turned up the radio, hoping for a distraction, only to hear the emergency broadcast warning about flooding in lower-lying areas. Whitewood was in for one of the worst storms in a decade. Yet he pressed on, his heart pounding. He muttered under his breath, "Just let me get through this shift safely." In a sense, the storm raging outside felt oddly symbolic, a manifestation of the inner turmoil and desperation Daniel had fought for so long. Little did he know the culminating heartbreak, hope, and transformation of his entire life were about to converge at one singular address, 94 Maplewood Drive. The road leading to Maplewood Drive was eerily deserted. Flickering streetlights cast wavering shadows on the rain-soaked pavement. A fallen branch blocked part of the road. Daniel slowed, navigating around it carefully, tires splashing through puddles that had formed in the gutters. Everything seemed surreal, as if the world outside had paused in apprehension. He parked in front of a modest but charming single-story house with a wraparound porch. The house glowed warmly from within, standing in stark contrast to the raging storm. A single porch light illuminated the front door. Clutching the insulated pizza bag, Daniel dashed up the steps, pounding on the door. His black hair was plastered to his forehead by the time the door swung open. Standing there in a loose sweater and jeans was a woman. She was around Daniel's age, with long auburn hair tied back in a loose ponytail. Even under the porch light, her hazel eyes radiated warmth and concern. She offered him a hurried greeting as a gust of wind threatened to blow rain into her home. "You must be soaked," she said over the roar of the storm. Come in, just for a second." Daniel shook his head instinctively. Delivery drivers usually weren't supposed to go inside, but the storm was relentless, and the woman's tone held genuine worry. "It's okay," he said. "I just need your signature and payment. Then I'll be on my way." "Are you serious?" she countered, stepping back to let him in. "Look at that weather. You're dripping wet." Her name was Audrey Morgan, as he soon learned when she pulled out her wallet. The living room behind her was modest, but cozy with shelves filled with books and pictures. A small couch faced a television, and the entire space felt unexpectedly welcoming. Against his better judgment, Daniel stepped inside, allowing the door to close against the onslaught outside. His clothes were soaked. Water pooled at his feet. Thunder boomed overhead, rattling the windows. Audrey reached for a clean towel draped over a nearby chair. "Here," she said softly, handing it to Daniel. "At least dry off a bit." Her kindness felt like a small beacon. Daniel took the towel. "Thank you," he murmured, feeling both gratitude and embarrassment. It wasn't often he encountered such compassion from a stranger. The pizza delivery world was usually one of brief smiles, quick tips, and hurried goodbyes. This was different. As he dabbed at his face, she asked, "How much do I owe you?" He told her the total, and she started counting out the bills. Then out of the blue, her gaze flickered to the ringless finger of his left hand. "Are you married?" The question was abrupt, and Daniel's heart stumbled. It was an odd inquiry, especially from someone he'd only just met. "No," he replied tersely, not wanting to share the complicated details. "Not anymore." She nodded thoughtfully, a flicker of understanding passing over her face. "I'm sorry," she said. "Divorce." He offered a tight smile. "Something like that." Rain hammered the windows, filling the silence. "Anyway, thanks for letting me step in out of the storm." Just then the lights flickered. Audrey's expression tightened. "I hope the power doesn't go out," she said. She added a few extra bills to the total, handing them to Daniel. "Please keep the change. It looks awful out there. Are you able to finish your shift safely?" He pocketed the money. Feeling a rush of relief, every penny counted. "I'll manage," he said. "I just hope I can get back without a downed tree blocking the road." Audrey hesitated, as if debating whether to say more. Her eyes flicked to the pizza box in Daniel's hand, then to his drenched cap. Finally, she asked in a low voice, "Do you have children?" The question came out of nowhere, and it felt personal. But there was a gentleness in her tone that made Daniel believe she wasn't just making small talk. He sighed quietly. "Yes, a daughter. She's 6. She's with my neighbor tonight." A hint of a smile crossed Audrey's features. "I see," she said quietly. The lights flickered again. For a moment, Daniel caught sight of a lingering sadness in her expression, as if she was grappling with her own memories. But then she snapped back to the present. "I'm sorry, I don't mean to pry. It's just—" She laughed awkwardly. "Never mind. I'm glad you're not stuck out there alone in this storm. Please be careful on your way back." With that, Daniel thanked her one last time and braved the rain to return to his car. As he drove away, he couldn't help but replay the strange, intimate questions in his mind. Why would she ask if he was single? Why would she ask if he had children? He tried to brush it off. People were unpredictable, especially when storms rattled nerves. Yet something about the warmth and concern in Audrey's eyes lingered in his thoughts, as if an invisible cord connected them. Back at old Jack's, Bobby was waiting impatiently. Power in certain sections of Whitewood was starting to fail, and phone lines were down. Daniel was instructed to do one more delivery to the west side of town, which meant passing through the worst of the storm. "You sure you can handle it?" Bobby asked, his eyes worried. "I can't lose my best driver." Daniel forced a smile. "I'll be fine," he lied. Lily's face swam before his eyes. Everything he did was for her. If it meant risking a dangerous drive for the extra tip, then so be it. The next delivery didn't go smoothly. The roads were flooded, a traffic light was out, and at one intersection, a reckless driver nearly sideswiped Daniel's Corolla. By the time he finally dropped off the order, rainwater was seeping into his shoes. He felt the damp cold creeping into his bones. The tip was mediocre. He cursed under his breath, battered by exhaustion. When the shift ended well past midnight, Daniel drove home through the storm, maneuvering around fallen debris, until at last he pulled into his parking space at the apartment complex. He trudged upstairs, drenched, kaying into the apartment. Mrs. Berner, who lived directly across, was awake, waiting anxiously. She gave him a disapproving look. "Daniel, you look like a drowned rat," she scolded gently. "You need to be more careful." He nodded wearily. "I know. Thank you for watching Lily. Was she any trouble?" "Oh no," Mrs. Bernard said fondly. "We made cookies. She fell asleep around 9. She asked if you could read her a bedtime story, though. I'm sorry she missed you." Daniel felt a pang of guilt. Lily needed him, and he was out in the storm chasing tip money, but such was their reality. He took Lily from Mrs. Bernard's cozy apartment, carrying her sleeping form. Her little arms curled around his neck, and she stirred slightly. "Daddy," she mumbled, not fully awake. "I'm here, Pumpkin," he whispered. He gently placed her in her own bed, tucking the covers around her. She murmured something, drifting back to sleep. Daniel stood over her for a moment, pushing wet hair from his forehead, gazing at this innocent face that made every struggle worth it. After he'd changed into dry clothes, Daniel sank into a battered armchair in his living room. The wind still howled, and he heard the rattle of the windows. Rain drummed incessantly on the rooftop. His thoughts drifted to Audrey Morgan. The memory of her hazel eyes, her gentle voice, the kindness in her home, it gnawed at him. Who was she? Why did she ask such personal questions? Was it idle curiosity, or something deeper? Daniel brushed aside the thoughts. He had rent to worry about Lily's school fees and 1,000 other burdens. He had no place for fantasies about chance encounters in the midst of a storm. With a groan, he closed his eyes, letting exhaustion claim him, oblivious to the fact that his life had pivoted that night, setting in motion a chain of events he never could have imagined. The next morning, Whitewood woke to a drenched world. Trees had fallen, power lines were down, and local news channels reported numerous road closures. Daniel had the morning free from his hardware store shift, and Lily's school was cancelled due to flooding. While Lily quietly colored in the kitchen, Daniel fidgeted with his phone, calling the electric company to see if there were any updates about the partial outage in their building. In the midst of this chaotic day, there was a frantic knock on his door. Mrs. Bernard stood there breathless. "Daniel, I need your help. My granddaughter. Joanna is stranded downtown, and her phone died. She can't get an Uber or a taxi. Would you be able to drive out there?" Daniel hesitated. Road closures were everywhere. He was worried about Lily. But Mrs. Bernard was a kind neighbor. She had helped him countless times. He couldn't just abandon her in her hour of need. Summoning Lily, they both followed Mrs. Bernard into the hallway. "Are you okay with going for a drive, Munchkin?" he asked Lily, kneeling to zip up her jacket. She nodded enthusiastically, always thrilled to go anywhere with her dad. Half an hour later, they navigated flooded streets and detours, finally reaching the corner where Mrs. Bernard's granddaughter Joanna was waiting. She was soaked and shivering. Daniel helped her into the back seat next to Lily, turning on the heater full blast. Joanna's relief was palpable. "Thank you so much," she said, rubbing her hands together for warmth. As they slowly returned to the apartment building, Daniel remained hyper-focused on the road. Streets were slick with water, and debris littered every corner. The radio crackled with warnings, advising drivers to stay home unless absolutely necessary. When they finally pulled into the lot, Mrs. Bernard was waiting with hot chocolate in her hands, tears in her eyes. "God bless you, Daniel." "Really?" He shrugged off the praise. "I just did what anyone would do," he said. Yet he couldn't shake the lingering sense of foreboding. Even though the day's storm had calmed, his life was still precarious, overshadowed by the same problems: money, custody, exhaustion. That evening, as Lily took a nap on the couch, Daniel's phone buzzed with a call from an unknown number. He answered, expecting perhaps a telemarketer or a wrong number. Instead, a soft voice greeted him. "Hi, Daniel. It's Audrey Morgan. I'm sorry to call out of the blue. I got your number from old Jack's. Bobby let me have it in case there was an issue with my delivery. But this is personal. I hope it's okay." Daniel felt a jolt of surprise. How had Audrey tracked him down so quickly? He steeled himself. "Yes, of course. Is everything all right?" A pause. "Well, I wanted to say thank you for delivering pizza in that storm. You could have refused. And..." She broke off, sighing softly. "Look, I know this sounds strange, but you left an impression. I don't know. I'm sorry if it's weird for me to call. I wanted to check if you and your daughter were safe. The storm was terrible. Are you both okay?" Her concern caught Daniel off guard. He blinked, glancing over at Lily, who slept with a small furrow in her brow. "We're fine," he said, voice subdued. "Thank you for asking. And thanks for the tip the other night. Every bit helps." Audrey's tone brightened, as if relieved. No problem. Listen, would it be all right if I invited you two over for dinner sometime? I know we barely know each other, but you seem like a good person, and your daughter might enjoy meeting someone new. Daniel's heart hammered. This was such an unexpected development. He thought back to her gentle questions, the fleeting sorrow in her eyes. Maybe it wouldn't hurt to at least have a conversation. Adult company was rare for him. Still, a lifetime of caution made him hesitate. We'll see, he said, a guarded edge to his voice. I'll need to check my schedule, but I appreciate the offer. They hung up soon after exchanging polite farewells. Yet Daniel found himself restless, pacing his small living room. The memory of her hazel eyes, the warmth in her voice, it beckoned him. Could he trust someone again? Did he even have room in his life for that kind of hope? Despite his uncertainties, Daniel agreed to meet Audrey the following weekend. She suggested a casual lunch at a local cafe someplace public, safe, and kid-friendly. Lily was thrilled by the idea of going out, especially since Daniel rarely had time to treat her to meals outside of home. So on a crisp Saturday, with the storm's devastation slowly being cleaned up throughout Whitewood, Daniel dressed Lily in her favorite pink coat, and together they drove to the Whistling Kettle Cafe. Audrey arrived first, waving them over to a small corner table by the window. She looked more relaxed in daylight, wearing a simple blue sweater and jeans. She greeted Lily with a warm smile. "Hi there, you must be Lily," she said, handing the girl a small coloring book. Lily's eyes lit up, and Daniel felt a tug in his chest. He hadn't expected Audrey to bring a gift. The conversation started awkwardly with small talk about the cafe's decor and the aftermath of the storm. But as they eased into the meal, Audrey asked gently about Lily's school, what subjects she enjoyed. Lily, shy at first, began to chatter about her favorite teacher and how she wanted to learn piano someday. Daniel, sipping coffee, observed the woman across from him. She engaged with Lily easily, her eyes shining with genuine interest. She listened with full attention, offering little jokes and compliments. It was so unlike the superficial pleasantries he'd grown used to. He wondered what her angle was. Nobody was this kind to strangers without a reason. But then maybe he was the one who'd grown cynical. Finally, after Lily excused herself to use the restroom, escorted by a kindly waitress who recognized Daniel from the hardware store, Audrey's gaze settled on him. "You have a wonderful daughter. You must be proud." "I am," Daniel replied, tensing slightly. "She's my world." Audrey hesitated. "Look, I hope I'm not overstepping, but I understand what it's like to struggle alone. I lost my parents young and was shuffled around in foster care until I turned 18. I had to figure out everything on my own. No guidance, no financial support. I see the weight on your shoulders, and I guess I just want to help if I can." There it was. Daniel felt the stirring of suspicion. "How could you help?" he asked, trying to keep his tone neutral. "I appreciate your concern, but Lily and I manage just fine." Audrey met his eyes steadily. "I'm not a charity organization, Daniel. I'm just someone who's been lonely and knows how it feels. Sometimes a friend can make a world of difference." She sighed. "Also, I wanted to tell you something. It might sound strange, but I have a job opportunity. My uncle owns a small insurance firm, and he's looking for a reliable, honest person to fill a junior administrative role. When I mentioned I met someone who seemed trustworthy, he asked if you might be interested." Daniel stared. This was all happening too fast. "You barely know me," he said quietly. "And you're offering me a job." "I'm offering you a chance to interview," Audrey corrected. "My Uncle Darren Morgan is the one who'd make the final decision. But I do know people sometimes get stuck in a rut, delivery jobs, minimum wage, barely scraping by. You might like a different path." It felt like a lifeline dangled before him. But was it real? Could he trust it? Lily bounced back over to the table, her pink coat flapping, and the conversation paused. They shifted to safer topics. Movies. Lily liked the cafe's desserts. When lunch ended, Audrey slipped Daniel a business card with her uncle's name and number. "No pressure," she said, gently patting his arm in goodbye. "Just think about it." That night, as Daniel sat at his kitchenette table paying bills and marveling at how empty his bank account was, he stared at Darren Morgan's business card. It represented an opportunity, a possible escape from the endless cycle of delivering pizzas. But was it too good to be true? Part of him feared it was a trick, or that Audrey had ulterior motives. Another part of him quietly longed for a break from the daily grind. Daniel's hesitation to trust Audrey wasn't unfounded. Over the last 2 years, life had dealt him blow after blow. He'd lost friends who'd taken Maria's side family, who disapproved of the divorce and job opportunities due to the demands of single parenthood. His trust had eroded. During a particularly stressful afternoon, Daniel confided in Mrs. Berner about the job offer. She gave him a knowing smile. "Daniel, you can't let the past imprison you forever. Sometimes people come into our lives for a reason. Maybe this Audrey is just what you need." He made the call, setting up an interview with Darren Morgan. A few days later, wearing the only button-down shirt he owned and a pair of ironed slacks, Daniel stepped into Morgan Insurance. The office was small but professional. Darren Morgan, a silver-haired man in his late 50s, greeted him with a firm handshake, eyes crinkling in a polite smile. During the interview, Darren asked about Daniel's work experience, his goals, and most notably his reliability. Daniel spoke truthfully about his responsibilities as a father, his struggles to make ends meet. He admitted he had no experience in insurance, but he was a quick learner. "I trust Audrey's judgment," Darren said at the end. "She speaks highly of your character. We're in need of someone dedicated to handle the day-to-day administrative tasks, client follow-ups, that sort of thing. It's entry-level pay, but the hours are steady. The benefits are decent." Daniel's heart pounded. Steady hours, a decent wage, health insurance for Lily. It all sounded too good to be true. "I thank you," he stammered. "I really appreciate this." Darren nodded. "I'll have HR reach out with a formal offer. Let's give it a 2-week trial, see if it's a good fit." Daniel left Morgan Insurance, feeling a cautious hope blooming in his chest. By the time he was back in his battered Corolla, he was almost trembling with relief. For so long it felt like the walls were closing in. But here was a door, maybe a real opportunity. He told Lily that night. She jumped up and down, excited that Daddy might have a better job that didn't require him leaving at odd hours or working late nights. That alone was worth any risk of disappointment, her shining eyes, her belief in him. A few days later, the official offer arrived in an email. Daniel accepted giving his notice at Old Jack's and scheduling fewer hours at the hardware store. He wondered if he owed Audrey a more personal thank you. He decided to text her a simple message. "Got the job. Thank you for helping me. I really appreciate it." A minute later, his phone dinged. "Congratulations. Let's celebrate soon. I'm really happy for you and Lily." Yet despite these promising developments, Daniel couldn't shake the lingering question, why was Audrey so invested in helping him? Over the next week, he resolved to find out. The celebration turned out to be a home-cooked meal at Audrey's house, the same cozy single story on Maplewood Drive. She invited Daniel and Lily over on a Sunday afternoon. The storm's debris had mostly been cleared, and the sun shone warmly for the first time in weeks. Lily sprinted around Audrey's neat front yard, marveling at the bird bath and little garden gnomes. Inside, the aroma of roast chicken and mashed potatoes enveloped them. Audrey had set the table with care, complete with a small vase of daisies. "I hope you like comfort food," she said, offering Daniel a glass of lemonade. He smiled, a tension he'd carried for days melting slightly. "This is wonderful. Lily and I rarely get a home-cooked meal that we don't rush through." His gratitude was genuine. Lily was already perched at the table, eyes wide. Dinner conversation flowed easily. Audrey asked Lily about her favorite cartoon, her dreams of becoming an artist, and whether she liked her new teacher. Lily answered each question with the honesty of a child, her inhibitions evaporating under Audrey's welcoming presence. Midway through dinner, Lily announced she needed to use the bathroom. Audrey pointed her down the hall, and Daniel listened to the patter of her feet fade. Suddenly, the atmosphere turned hushed. Audrey looked at him with serious eyes. "Daniel," she began, "I need to tell you something. I don't want there to be secrets between us." His stomach twisted. "Okay," he said cautiously, setting down his fork. Audrey took a breath. "I told you I grew up in foster care. It was tough. But what I didn't mention is that when I turned 18, I came into an inheritance from my grandfather. It was unexpected. He and my parents had been estranged for years. But he left me a significant trust, and I've used it to help kids who age out of foster care." She paused, studying his reaction. "I also fund scholarships anonymously. I prefer to keep it all private because I've seen how money can change the way people treat you." Daniel's mind reeled. Audrey wasn't just a friendly neighbor or an average woman. She was wealthy and, by the sound of it, extremely generous. The memory of her cozy but unpretentious home flitted through his mind. She was living modestly, despite having the means to do otherwise. Before he could speak, Audrey continued. "After the storm, when you arrived on my doorstep, something about the way you carried yourself, the exhaustion, the determination to provide for Lily, it reminded me of when I was completely on my own. You didn't complain or ask for help, even though you were soaked to the bone. That night, I asked if you were married because—" She trailed off, cheeks flushing. "Because I noticed there was no ring, and I was curious. I'm not usually this forward, but something about you made me want to reach out." Daniel felt his chest tighten. So this was the truth behind her kindness. She had resources, and she saw something in him that compelled her to help. He wasn't sure if he should feel grateful or suspicious. People had used him before or pitied him. He didn't want pity. He searched her gaze. "Audrey," he said slowly, "thank you for telling me. I appreciate your honesty. I'm just trying to wrap my head around it. So you're wealthy." She gave a small laugh. "Wealthy is a relative term, I suppose. But yes, I'm financially secure. I've been careful with investments. I've made sure I can keep doing philanthropic work. But I live simply because that's how I like it." He studied her, noting the sincerity in her voice. "Why tell me now?" Her eyes flickered with vulnerability. "Because I want your trust, Daniel, and I want a real chance with you and Lily." A wave of emotion crashed over him. He swallowed hard, glancing away. His life had always been a struggle, earning just enough to scrape by, every decision driven by necessity. Now here was someone offering help, wanting to be part of his life. Could he accept that? Did he deserve it? Just then, Lily bounded back into the room, her face bright. "Daddy, I love her shower curtain. It has fish all over it," she exclaimed, earning a soft laugh from both adults. Daniel ruffled her hair, forcing a smile. "That's great, Pumpkin." He looked back at Audrey, words failing him. They both knew that a seed had been planted, one that might grow into something bigger if he let it. In the weeks that followed, Daniel began his new job at Morgan Insurance, balancing part-time hours at the hardware store for some extra income. He was learning the ropes quickly, thanks in part to Audrey's gentle pep talks. She'd drop by on her lunch breaks, bringing him coffee, chatting briefly. The office staff seemed to like her, though they had no idea she was related to the boss. Audrey insisted on keeping that detail quiet, to avoid favoritism rumors. Lily settled into a happier routine, too. Daniel wasn't forced to work late nights anymore, which meant he could pick her up from school himself, help her with homework, read her bedtime stories. Their relationship blossomed with the stability. But life rarely allows smooth sailing for too long. A rumble of tension came when Maria, Daniel's ex-wife, unexpectedly appeared at Lily's school one afternoon. Daniel got a frantic call from the front desk. By the time he arrived, Lily was visibly upset and Maria was pacing, eyes wild. "What are you doing here?" Daniel demanded, heart pounding as he approached them. Maria lifted her chin. "I have a right to see my daughter." Her presence threw Daniel's carefully rebuilt life into chaos. Maria hadn't contacted them in over a year, not even a phone call on Lily's birthday. Now she wanted visitation rights. She wore an expensive blouse, had her hair impeccably styled, and exuded a confidence that grated on Daniel's nerves. He pulled Lily aside protectively, crouching down to her level. "It's okay, Lily," he whispered, trying to soothe her trembling. He turned back to Maria. "We had an agreement. You can't just show up. You need to contact me first." Maria shrugged. "I've been trying to straighten out my life. I missed Lily. Is that a crime?" Daniel clenched his jaw. He knew that legally Maria still had certain visitation privileges, but she'd never used them before. Why now? He couldn't help suspecting her sudden reappearance had ulterior motives. He forced himself to remain calm, at least in front of Lily. Eventually they reached a tense arrangement. Maria would schedule a future visit with Lily under Daniel's terms. He didn't want to cut her out of Lily's life if she was genuine, but he had to protect his daughter from disappointment. That night, Daniel lay awake, fear gnawing at him. If Maria pursued legal avenues, could she threaten his custody? He'd fought so hard to keep Lily. Now, with a more stable job and a budding connection to Audrey, everything was finally looking up. Maria's return felt like a looming storm cloud all over again. Audrey sensed Daniel's worry the next day when she stopped by his cubicle. Her brow furrowed in concern. "You look like you didn't sleep," she said softly. He sighed, burying his face in his hands. "Maria is back. She wants to see Lily. I'm terrified it's going to unravel everything." Audrey placed a comforting hand on his shoulder. "You have custody. She can't just take Lily away. Do you have a lawyer?" Daniel shook his head. "I can't afford one right now. The last legal battle drained me." Audrey drew in a breath. "Daniel, let me help. I know a family attorney, Thomas Rogers. He's very good. I've worked with him on some non-profit cases. He could give you advice, maybe even represent you pro bono, if you qualify." Pride flared in Daniel's chest. He hated feeling like a charity case. Yet Lily's welfare was at stake. With reluctance, he nodded. "I'd appreciate it if you could set up a meeting," he said quietly. A few days later, Daniel sat across from Thomas Rogers in a tidy law office explaining the situation. The attorney listened intently, asking questions about Maria's history, the custody arrangement, and Lily's current well-being. "Don't panic," Thomas said calmly. "Courts rarely disrupt a stable custody arrangement without compelling evidence. Maria can request visitation, but it has to be in Lily's best interest. If she wants more than that, she'll need to prove she's capable of providing a healthy environment. We can negotiate from a position of strength. It wasn't a guarantee, but it was something." Daniel left the meeting with a newfound sense of hope and a gnawing gratitude toward Audrey, who waited outside in the corridor. When he told her the lawyer's advice, she smiled gently. "See, you're not alone in this." He looked at her emotions stirring. "Why are you doing all this for me?" She paused, eyes shining with unshed tears. "Because I believe in you, and Lily, and I don't want to see someone good lose out just because life's been unfair. I want to stand beside you, Daniel." In that moment, Daniel felt a wave of unspoken affection surge between them. He took her hand, giving it a gentle squeeze. Neither of them said anything more, but the air was thick with promise and uncertainty alike. As the custody issue loomed, Maria scheduled a supervised visit at a local play center. Daniel went along determined to observe how she interacted with Lily. It had been a year since she'd last seen her daughter. Maria tried to be playful, but Lily was wary, clinging to Daniel's hand at first. Over time, Lily relaxed, playing with building blocks and painting crafts under Maria's watchful eye. Maria seemed genuinely moved, but Daniel noticed her ring finger adorned with an expensive ring. She was living comfortably somehow. After the visit, Maria cornered Daniel. "Look, I want to be part of Lily's life," she began, voice pitched low. "I've changed, Daniel." He studied her carefully. "Why now?" She shrugged, defiant. "Maybe I realized I made a mistake leaving. I can see you're doing better now. You've got a new job, a new friend." A prickle of anger rose in Daniel. "Audrey has nothing to do with this," he snapped. Maria raised an eyebrow. "Really? Then why is she footing the bill for that fancy lawyer? Thomas Rogers doesn't come cheap." Before Daniel could respond, Maria's expression shifted, a coy smile spreading on her face. "Maybe if you can afford that, it's because you have money coming from somewhere else. Or maybe your new girlfriend has deep pockets." She laughed, a harsh sound. "I hope you're not just a rebound for some do-gooder charity act." He stiffened, outraged. "That's enough, Maria. Stay out of my personal life. This is about Lily, not us." Maria shrugged again, turning on her heel. "We'll see. I can hire lawyers too, you know." It was a punch to Daniel's gut, an implicit threat that she might attempt a custody fight. He left the play center with Lily feeling the weight of uncertainty pressing down. Yet Lily was unexpectedly calm. "Mummy was nice to me," she said softly in the car. "But I like being with you, Daddy." Daniel forced a smile, hugging her tight. "I love you, Lily. Always remember that." He drove back to their apartment with a storm of thoughts swirling in his mind. Was Maria truly interested in reconciling, Or was she fishing for a financial advantage? Did she suspect Audrey's hidden wealth? A new fear took hold. Maria might try to blackmail or manipulate the situation for monetary gain. That evening, Daniel confided all his worries to Audrey. They were in his small living room after Lily had gone to bed, cups of tea growing cold on the coffee table. He didn't hold back. He told her what Maria had said, how she insinuated that Audrey's money might draw him in. He expected Audrey to be alarmed or offended, but she merely pressed her lips into a firm line. "I won't let her intimidate you," she said calmly. "And I certainly won't let her use my finances against you or Lily. We'll talk to Thomas Rogers. We'll be prepared if she tries anything." Daniel felt tears prick at the corners of his eyes. He inhaled deeply, a wave of gratitude, and something deeper, a stirring affection welling up. Without thinking, he reached for Audrey's hand. Their fingers entwined. When she leaned closer, Daniel's heart thundered. He found himself brushing his lips lightly against hers, a tentative kiss full of uncertainty and promise. They pulled apart, breathless. "Sorry," Daniel murmured, flushing with embarrassment. She shook her head, smiling softly. "Don't apologize." A poignant stillness settled over them. In that silent exchange, they both acknowledged the shift in their bond. It was no longer just kindness or friendship. Something real was growing between them, something that might reshape both their lives if they let it. Over the next month, Daniel's routine became more stable than ever before. He thrived in the administrative role at Morgan Insurance, impressing Darren with his diligence. The hardware store job became purely weekend shifts, allowing him more time for Lily. Best of all, Audrey's quiet, supportive presence became a source of solace. She and Daniel began officially dating in a gentle, slow-burning way, cautious about Lily's feelings and mindful of gossip. Maria hovered on the periphery, sending the occasional snide text. She hadn't filed for any formal custody changes yet, perhaps realizing she had little legal ground. But Daniel couldn't let his guard down. One evening, as Audrey and Lily were sharing a picnic in a small park near Whitewood's lakefront, Audrey unveiled a surprise. She pulled out a thick envelope from her purse. "Daniel." "I've been working on something," she said, handing it to him. He opened it, stunned to find the deed to a modest house in Whitewood. It needed renovations, but it was paid for. "What is this?" he asked, voice trembling. Audrey took a deep breath. "It's a house I bought. I wanted to find a space for you and Lily, somewhere stable, where you wouldn't have to worry about rent or dangerous neighborhoods. I know it's a big step, and I don't want you to feel pressured. But you mentioned you dreamed of a yard where Lily could play safely." Daniel's mind spun. Was she offering him a home? Just like that? "This is too much," he said, near tears. "I can't let you do this." Audrey smiled gently, placing a hand over his. "You wouldn't owe me anything. Think of it as an investment in our future. We could renovate it together, make it our home, if it feels right." Lily, sensing the gravity of the moment, looked between them with curious eyes. "Daddy, is that a new house?" Daniel nodded slowly, tears threatening to spill. "Yes, sweetheart. Audrey wants to help us have a better place to live." In his heart, Daniel knew it was a monumental gesture, one he could never have imagined a few short months ago. He remembered the very first moment on Audrey's porch in the storm, how improbable it all felt. He gripped her hand, voice shaking with emotion. I don't know what to say. I'm overwhelmed." She squeezed back. "Just say we'll face what comes next together. That's all I need to hear." His voice cracked. "Yes," he whispered. "Yes." Life was on the cusp of real happiness. Daniel started packing up his old apartment, preparing to move into the new house. Audrey helped him set up a plan to hire contractors for basic repairs. Lily was excited about picking out paint colors for her future bedroom. Hope and love, after so many stormy days, finally seemed within reach. But trouble stirred again. Maria decided to file a motion for increased visitation, citing her improved circumstances. She also hinted in her filing that Daniel's new living situation might be courtesy of an outside party, implying Daniel was being financially manipulated. That stung his pride and threatened the stability he'd just started to build. Thomas Rogers guided Daniel through legal responses, and Audrey offered unwavering emotional and financial support. Still, Daniel was exhausted by the tension. He feared a courtroom battle, feared Lily being subjected to questions, and dreaded the possibility of losing the serenity he'd fought so hard for. Court day arrived a somber, nerve-wracking affair. Daniel stood in a small family court flanked by Thomas Rogers. Maria came with a lawyer Daniel didn't recognize. She demanded more time with Lily, claiming Daniel was emotionally neglectful and leveraging new financial resources that kept Lily away from her mother. Thomas Rogers countered each point methodically. He produced records showing Lily's consistent medical checkups, school attendance, and the safe environment Daniel provided. He also questioned Maria's sudden interest after a year of absence, highlighting her lack of financial support for Lily in that time. Eventually, Audrey was called as a witness. She explained under oath that she had purchased a home in Whitewood with the intention of allowing Daniel and Lily to live there, citing her desire for Lily's stability and Daniel's reliability. She clarified that it was not a manipulation, but an act of care and partnership, openly acknowledging her financial capacity. Sensing the courtroom tension, Maria's lawyer pressed for a more salacious interpretation, asking, "Isn't it true that you're using your money to control Daniel Reyes, effectively severing Lily from her mother?" Audrey's chin lifted. "No," she said firmly. "I offered Daniel and Lily a home because I love them. I want to share my blessings and create a safe environment for Lily, who is an innocent child. If anything, I've encouraged Maria to maintain appropriate visitation, but only if it's in Lily's best interest." The judge, taking in all the evidence, eventually ruled that while Maria could have supervised visitation, the primary custody arrangement would remain unchanged. He admonished Maria for her lengthy absence and advised her to rebuild trust gradually, respecting the child's emotional well-being. A wave of relief crashed over Daniel when the gavel came down. He nearly collapsed, tears in his eyes, as Audrey slipped an arm around his waist for support. Maria looked furious, but there was nothing she could do. Daniel's love and stability had won out over her sudden, suspicious claims. The day after the court ruling, Daniel and Audrey walked hand in hand through the house they would soon call home. The living room still smelled of fresh paint. Sunlight streamed in through newly cleaned windows. Lily scampered around, squealing with delight at the echo her voice made in the empty space. He paused, gazing at the woman who had changed his life. She caught his stare and blushed. "What?" she asked playfully. "Thank you," he said, voice husky with emotion. "For everything. You saved us, Audrey." She shook her head softly. "No, Daniel. You saved yourself. You were always strong. I just gave you a little help along the way." They moved into the house the following weekend. Friends from the hardware store helped shift the furniture. Mrs. Berner provided baked goods and moral support. Even Darren Morgan stopped by to congratulate them. bringing a tool set as a housewarming gift. When the last box was unloaded, Daniel stood in the middle of the living room, boxes piled around him. Lily bounding up and down the stairs, her laughter echoing off the walls. Audrey joined him, dusting off her jeans. They watched Lily's joy hearts full. "It feels like a dream," Daniel murmured, eyes brimming with gratitude. "I never thought I'd get here. With a stable job, a home, a family." Audrey slipped her hand into his. "It's real. We made it real together." Months passed. The house transformed into a loving home. Walls were painted soft hues. Lily's art hung proudly in the hallway, and a small vegetable garden sprouted in the backyard, Audrey's idea for fresh tomatoes and herbs. Daniel's role at Morgan Insurance grew as he proved himself capable and responsible. He eventually left the hardware store job, focusing entirely on the career that gave him better hours to care for Lily and more time with Audrey. Meanwhile, Maria's visits became less tense. She appeared sporadically, perhaps realizing that controlling or manipulating Daniel was futile. Lily's happiness remained a testament to the stability Daniel had fought to provide. With each passing day, Daniel and Audrey's connection deepened. He learned to trust again, to believe in the possibility that life could be good, that love could find him even when he'd all but given up. One evening, after Lily was tucked in bed, Daniel and Audrey sat on the back porch sipping tea under the stars. The warm summer breeze carried the scent of lavender and freshly watered earth. Audrey leaned her head on Daniel's shoulder. "Ever imagine you'd be here?" she asked softly. He smiled, pressing a kiss to her hair. "Not in my wildest dreams. Sometimes in the middle of the night, I wake up expecting the worst. Then I realize it's real, that I have a daughter who's happy, a woman who loves me, and a future that isn't just about surviving anymore." She reached into her pocket, fumbling with something. Then shyly she held out a small velvet box. Daniel's heart hammered as she opened it to reveal a simple, elegant ring, rose gold with a tiny diamond set in the center. "I know this is unorthodox," she whispered, voice trembling. "But I want to be with you legally forever in every sense. Lily deserves a family. And I can't imagine my life without you, Daniel Reyes." Tears slipped from his eyes. He plucked the ring from the box, setting it gently aside. Then he clasped her hands, voice thick. "Audrey Morgan, you turned my life upside down, and I thank God for that every day. Yes, I'll marry you. I'll stand beside you always." They sealed their promise with a tender kiss under the stars, a beautiful testament to second chances and unbreakable hope. And so began the next chapter of Daniel's life, not as a struggling single dad weighed down by storms, but as a man who finally believed in love, security, and the bright horizons they could create together. Daniel's journey from a rain-soaked delivery driver to a beloved husband and father is more than a feel-good story. It's a powerful reminder that fate can step in at the most unexpected moments. Sometimes life's toughest storms lead us directly to the people who will shelter and uplift us. In Audrey, Daniel found love, support, and a future he once believed was impossible. And in Lily, they both found a reason to keep fighting, proof that every struggle can bloom into a brighter tomorrow when nurtured by hope. If this moving story resonated with you, please show your support by hitting the like button, sharing it with friends who need a spark of hope, and subscribing to our channel for more heart-warming tales. Let's keep spreading stories that remind us every storm can lead to a rainbow, if we dare to believe. Thank you for watching.